So why is it that you're technically not excluded, you're included, you're invited to conversations, to events, to parties. You're not unsuccessful. You have a social standing in society, but for some reason you never feel like people actually include you. They don't really pay attention to you. They don't really take into account what your thoughts are. And there are three mechanisms behind all of this. Number one is that there is a gap between your intentions and your actions and your behaviors versus other people's perception of you. So even though you have good intentions, even though you may want to convey a certain message, even though you have a certain opinion on something that you were trying to share with other people, if they don't perceive your intention as how you perceive it to be as, there's a gap between you and the other person. So this doesn't have anything to do with your social skills or so-called communication skills. It's perceptual skills. It's about perception and behavior. In some ways it can be quote-unquote communication, but really it's your behavior. Number two is the difference between participating in a group or in, let's say, your family dynamic or at work, etc., versus positioning. So I'm sure you're participating in events, in meetings, you're raising your hand, you're sharing your ideas, or even in a relationship, you're participating in the relationship, you're adding value to the relationship with your spouse, with your partner, whoever it is. Positioning, what I mean by that is that when you're in a group with people, you're included, but you're not really chosen by them. Kind of paradoxical, because in one sense you feel included by them because they're letting you participate in the event, in the gathering, whatever it is. But you also don't feel included at the same time. But especially this, you don't feel chosen. They don't seek you out for information. They don't necessarily go to you, go towards you, see what you think on XYZ. And to them, you don't really have a position in their system. And so that is the third mechanism, that you're not in someone's system. As in, for example, let's say issues happening, or you have this perception, or let's say you have this perception gap in your family. So let's say you've got your mom, you got your siblings, you got your in-laws, your cousins, etc., everyone in the family system, okay? You might not even feel like you're in their system. To one person, you're not one of the quote-unquote main characters in their system. For example, me, I've got my family, I've got my friends, they're in my system. But to someone else, you might not even be in their system. They might allow you to participate in interactions, invite you to gatherings, but you're not really someone that they mainly focus on. And this can all be due to simply how they perceive your intentions. For example, a great example of this is if your intention is to genuinely want to get to know someone. So you're asking questions, you're explaining yourself to them, you're explaining who you are. You want them to get to know you, for example. They might perceive that as you being egotistical. They might perceive you as having a big ego. They might be perceiving you as being narcissistic, as being inconsiderate, because maybe you end up not asking questions about them. But maybe that's not your intention at all. You're probably just trying to let them know more about you. You want to share who you are to them, trying to introduce yourself, but they're perceiving it in a different way. You have a good intention, but it's that gap between your intention and the impact you actually have on other people that is causing this mismatch, that is causing the way that they position you in their system, which is also causing different conflicts in your interactions. And this is causing you to feel like, yes, you're included, but you're not chosen. So the problem in this all is perceptual patterns, social patterns, behavioral patterns, the way people perceive your behavior, the way they perceive your patterns, and the patterns and signals that you are giving off. When you're acting in a certain way, behaving in a certain way, speaking in a certain way, people will have a certain perception of you. I'm not saying that their perception is going to be for sure negative or for sure positive. Perception is in everyone. We all have biases, thoughts, whether it's good, whether it's bad. A great example of this is that in social psychology, if you meet someone and they have the same name as you, or they like certain things that you like, versus if you meet someone else, they have a different name and they have just a few hobbies that are similar to you, but not as much as the first person. You're gonna like the first person a lot more. And it's not even necessarily about the hobbies themselves. It's the fact that you are similar to them. Similarity creates familiarity, creates liking. And so when you have these certain lenses and thoughts and biases about what you like, about what other people like, etc., that affects how you perceive people. A lot of people like to say, I don't judge people, or I'm not biased, or I'm not this, I'm not that. Yes, you are. I'm gonna get so much hate for this. Yes, you are. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying you're being negatively judgmental, or that you're insulting people, or that you're negative, or that you're a bad person. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that we all have a lens in which we see the world through, in which we see society through. And it is that affects each and every single one of our interactions. But we can't all see this ourselves. I've seen personally in my life where people act in not so great ways. Maybe their intention isn't bad. I don't know. But when I look at them, I perceive them in a certain way. And that affects the way I think about them, regardless of their intention. You could have the best intention, but if you're not realizing how other people are perceiving you as, you can't make that change. And I'm not saying to change what your opinion is, to change what your thought is, to change quote unquote who you are as a person. I'm just saying that you need to realize the patterns that you are giving off to people that are making them perceive you in a different way, because that's probably why you're getting the social outcomes that you don't want. And this is probably why you don't develop a deeper level of trust, of responsibility, of deeper connections, of fulfillment with people in your life. This can be with romantic relationships, with platonic relationships, with your family, with your bosses, with your managers, coworkers, friends, etc. Anyone. You might be thinking that because you don't feel chosen, there is no depth in any of your interactions with anyone that you know. They see you for who you are on the surface. No matter how much information you give them, no matter how much questions you ask about them, it's the way they perceive you. And you can't be aware of how people perceive you if you can't see the patterns in yourself. And it can be really hard to do this without an external objective view. Of course, some people are able to develop so much self-awareness in how they behave with others. But to see this whole dynamic of how you are being perceived and how you are acting, that takes a huge different level of awareness and of objectivity, because we almost all have our own lenses and our own biases. So I'm trying to think about the way you guys might perceive me. I might not get it correctly each time, because I'll admit I am in some ways biased about myself. And this has a lot of work to do with your deeper core beliefs, your identity, and etc. And this is why personally I go to therapy, because my therapist helps me build and really pulls out an objective viewpoint. And I'm not saying that you have to go to therapy because you have this perception and behavioral gap between your intentions and your impact on other people. I'm not saying you need therapy. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, I don't know. But that's an example, just to explain that in order to see this gap, in order to close this gap, to help better your relationships and your connections, you might need something else outside of yourself. So thanks for watching the video. If you haven't, please make sure to like and subscribe. It helps me a lot, and I'll show up on your feed more if that's what you want. Don't forget, if you would like a personalized perception audit, personally from me, then check out the link in my bio, or I'll also put it in the description below, and apply and join the waitlist, because I can only do so many audits per day, because it's me who's doing it, and it takes kind of a long time to do one audit. So if you're interested, definitely go apply now before the spots fill out. See you in the next video.